Hey, everybody. This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. This is a college football podcast, now a live streaming podcast, or I don't even know what you call it, live streaming show. We're just a college football enthusiast that analyze these games as they come. Right now is obviously the championship preview. What we usually do in each show is we do a recap of the games that happened previously, and then we will preview the games that are coming up. There's some other stuff we do each show usually, but that's usually during the regular season. This right now is the end of the year, so there's not much else going on except for the college football playoff games. Specifically, last week was the semifinals, and then tomorrow, Monday in LA, not far from where I live and where I'll end up being down in Inglewood at SoFi Stadium, will be TCU in Georgia. But a little bit about myself. I graduated from law school from Florida Coastal School of Law a couple years ago, and I did the sports law program there, and did that for 3 years. I ended up working in a couple of universities, Gardner Webb and University of South Florida, where I did my undergrad at. And I worked in both their athletic departments, in the compliance department. So I've got a good working knowledge of how the NCAA works. Not a great knowledge because it was only a total of 6 months that I did both of those. But then I also played semi-pro football for a couple of seasons. I recently did it. I did another season. It was just for a game or two. I didn't really have much time to do it because I was actually doing a lot of this with Hater Radio. But my co-host is Ian Gibson. Ian, go ahead and tell us a little about yourself. Introduce to everyone who you are and what your experience is in the college world and what you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I've been a lifelong college football fan. Pretty much came out the womb with football stripes on it. Been following the game ever since I was a kid. Grew up in kind of the mid 2000s of the BCS era, and have been following it and in love with it ever since. I do believe it's the best kind of football you can get. It's always exciting, full of passion. No two teams play the same. It's one of the best times of the year is when it's Saturdays during the fall. I have experience. I do a lot of the kind of behind the scenes work in kind of video production. Did a lot of that for a lot of local high school teams, and I've done that currently with USF as well, on all college athletic things with USF. And I've been, like I said, kind of been into the nitty gritty stuff of, college football, especially like the historical aspects, the record aspects, all that kind of stuff. I know I did like a challenge myself. I think I can name every national champion up to 1990, something like that. And it gets tricky when you go before BCS, because back then it was like you didn't have a championship game. You just were, yeah, they would just be like, well, both of them are undefeated, so shit, just give it to both of them. Those. I will say, side note, I know everybody complains about, they complain about how the BCS, they complain about the playoff. Nothing will be worse than that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so mostly I've just been a passionate college football fan, as I think everybody is, who follows the game. Mostly a fan first of, wanting to see the game evolve, and just always excited to see, college football of any aspect.
Yeah, so that's who we are. We're definitely huge college football fans. I started this 7 years ago, not really with any kind of capital involved. Really started it with like $12, and I've grown it from here. I've just kept going and going. We have a website, haterradio.com. You can reach us for our articles there. We're also on most of the socials, on Twitter and on YouTube. For YouTube, it's Hater Radio. Look for that. And then for Twitter, it's at hater_radio, but you can reach us there. But I did it very minimalistic at first. I didn't have much money, so I wasn't able to really like do it as best I could. I just kind of winged it as best I could. Ian became the co-host like 3 seasons ago, and he's been great. And we've been, doing a lot of stuff with this. I've been going to a lot of games. I went to the USF Florida game. I went to the Florida Texas A&M game, and then I went to the Florida Bowl game in Las Vegas. But that's who we are. We're definitely a brand that likes to talk about college football. We will mainly focus on Southern teams, but now that I've moved to LA, I talk about UCLA, USC, Pac-12 teams, but we talk about almost any team that's good. We'll focus on the teams that are the strongest and the most prevalent storylines. Even like Coastal Carolina or like UTSA, we will talk about, especially if they have a chance to make a dent in some of these games and like come after some of the big boys. We will talk about those teams because in college football, even though teams don't have as many stars, they still sometimes are good enough to beat some of these highly recruited teams. So with that being said, what we do with the show is we're going to do a recap of the games that happen and then a preview of the games of the game coming up. So with our recap here, we're going to recap the semifinals. So the first game was the Michigan TCU game. I was not surprised because I know how good TCU's offense is. And I think that probably is a huge surprise to most of the country because I think they thought that Michigan was just going to roll over them. Especially their defense was just going to like shut them down. But TCU's offense is very prolific, and they got a lot of help as well because those 2 pick sixes really were like the difference in the game. But they were still able to make a ton of plays, a lot of huge chunk yardage plays. Keandre Miller went down, I think, like in the second quarter, and he was doing quite well. But it was, once he went out and DeMarcado came in, he really was lights out, and he had over 150 yards and a touchdown, and he was just solid throughout the whole game. I was, surprised that he was able to do as well as he did. They have a strong running game regardless, but and Max Duggan didn't do that too bad either. He had 2 TDs on the ground. But Ian, what are your thoughts from this game? I mean, just Michigan made a lot of mistakes that really kept them from taking advantage of this TCU team.
Yeah, I think this game, I agree. Honestly, I thought Michigan played well, and I honestly think they did play TCU, but they just couldn't get out of their own way. And that's what the problem they had, the interceptions, the turnovers, and TCU capitalized on all of it, especially like missed tackles, blown assignments, that kind of stuff. I think like, the dagger in the heart last pass play, that 76-yard touchdown pass. It was a simple little dunk pass, and they couldn't, just the coverage was blown where everybody was on the other side of the field, and that one missed tackle was, pretty much it for that play. For TCU, and again, we've seen it all year with TCU. If you make a mistake or give them any window, they are going to capitalize on it, and they certainly did that against Michigan. And not only that, they made this as much as Michigan, tried to get, back into this game. This was the game TCU wanted. And I'm jumping ahead here, but this is probably what they want against Georgia, is when you have these very heavy, stuck in the mud defenses or teams that run this kind of play this kind of way. The way to beat them is to get them in a shootout. And that's exactly what TCU did. They jumped on them early, and they built a hole that was just too much for Michigan. And I'll give credit to Michigan. They didn't lie down and die. They tried. They got it to within 3 points of the fourth quarter, and they had time. It's just TCU responded the very next play to score that touchdown, and that was a tough one to come back from. So TCU, I think this was, a showcase of taking advantage of everything that was given to you, because Michigan certainly didn't. Even though I do honestly think they played better, they just made more mistakes.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's really what it was. And that's the other thing to draw from this is the fact that TCU, for their turnover margin, they're like I think they're +9 in turnover margin for the year. So they obviously are good with holding on to the ball and good at taking away the ball. So that's really the difference right there, is that they force mistakes from the quarterback from McCarthy, and those were deadly. I mean, pick sixes are deadly. Like, that's 14 points that he's specifically responsible for, and that was basically the difference in the game. Like, if he doesn't throw those pick sixes, there's a chance they could probably have won that game. But that's, you can't say that because it happened. So because it happened and it's in the game, this is what we had. And TCU is a strong defense. Their DBs are very good. One of them was a Thorpe finalist, and for best DB. And I was not surprised. I know maybe the rest of the country was surprised that TCU could do this. I was not. I kind of was surprised that Michigan came back as well as they did, because there were points in this game where I really thought TCU was about to really destroy them. And they just kept coming back. And it was like that point in the third quarter where Michigan would, like, they scored, then TCU fumbled, and then like Michigan scored right away. And I was just like, whoa. It was like instantly scored like 14 points, and it was like going the other way, and it was like, oh man, this game's like, it was getting a lot tighter. And then TCU actually really made a lot of plays near the end where they were running out the clock. Michigan kind of took too long on that last scoring drive that they had, and they really wasted a lot of time, which they should have been trying to get down the field and move quicker, but they were going very slow. I don't know why. They were very methodical. And then TCU was able to kill enough time to when Michigan got the ball at the end. They didn't have much time. They only had I think it was like 40 seconds left at the end, and TCU really tightened up. And there was that controversial targeting there. I don't know. It was really tough. They said no after reviewing it. I'm kind of leaning towards it probably wasn't, but I could see where that argument for it. It would have been really tough to give that, because it was like basically the end of the game right there, and you're just like giving them a target to continue the game. I don't know. It was definitely something. Even the announcer, I heard Blackledge, he was like, he was kind of like, this maybe shouldn't be called, but it was. The one thing I will say that I really didn't like with Michigan's play calling was that that fourth down call on the first drive, where it was like basically like a Philly special, and they were like doing like the reverse throw, and like, I don't know why you needed all that. You just needed a touchdown. You were really close. You were inside the 5. Like, don't do this razzle dazzle stuff. Like, just get in. Like, you needed to score right there. They didn't score, and then TCU basically, had their foot on the gas the rest of the way, and it just, from that point on, it just didn't seem like they could do it. Okay, so let's move on to Ohio State, Georgia, the second game. I mean, both of these games were excellent. I was amazed with these games. Like, these were the best college football semifinals we've ever had. Like, by far, it wasn't even close how these were the best games that we've ever had in these both slots. But Georgia wins 42-41 after a last-second field goal is kicked wide left. Just an amazing game, back and forth. CJ Stroud was just balling. I mean, this guy, I'm amazed. Like I know he was great all year, but like this was another level because Georgia is one of the best defenses in the country, and they made them look silly. I mean, he was just all over the place. He had great rushes, timely rushes when needed, and he had 348 yards passing and 4 TDs. Just an amazing game. Ian, I want to hear your opinion on this game because you know my opinion on this, but I want to hear yours, and then I'll dive into mine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. These were easily the best semifinal games, for sure. This game was certainly a wild one. Again, for me, it was, they did everything. Ohio State knew what they had to do. They had to make this a high scoring game because of how tough Georgia's defense is. And they were ahead and outplaying Georgia most of the game. But again, this is an example of how dangerous the Georgia team can be, is that you can, even if you're up 2 scores, you cannot let them back into the game. There's like, you have to go for the kill. And Ohio State just didn't do that. They had a 2-score lead. I think like 3 times during the game. I know they were up like 38-24. No, twice. They were up 38 to 24 in the third quarter, and then they were up earlier than that, like 21-7. They had a lot of chances to put the game away. But Georgia just kept coming back. And I agree, yes, CJ Stroud did everything he could to, will Ohio State to the win here. But I think it says a lot about Georgia just being resilient enough to come back from down that much with so little time, and so quickly too, especially that 76-yard pass, which really put them back in the driver's seat. For Ohio State, it's a very tough loss, especially on the missed field goal and all that. I think both teams played outstanding. This is one of those games where it's a shame a team had to lose, but Ohio State did everything they could to win, and they had the opportunity to just put it away, but they couldn't capitalize on it. And Georgia just, grabbed a hold of the ball and just wouldn't, let go towards the end of it there. It was kind of like, seeing a team slide down a grease pole is what it was when I saw Georgia coming back. Because you saw that with like the Alabama teams and all that. Like, no matter how hard you fight it, gravity's going to catch up. So nevertheless, it was an absolutely fantastic game. Georgia gets the win. Definitely, gutsy win and deserved it. It's a tough loss for Ohio State. You can always say, things were different this way, could have gone better, but in the end, Georgia won out.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia played extremely well. I mean, that play by Bowers to get that first down, I mean,
Yes.
that was I thought it was a turnover on downs because it was 4th down, and I was almost sure of it. And to watch it again, it just was remarkable. I mean, he made that play. Like it's all him. Like Stetson kind of threw it short, but I think that's just what the route was. And Bowers had to do that. Or I think if he doesn't make that play, I think Georgia loses that game. And because I think they scored a field goal. I don't know what they did on that drive. I can't remember specifically, but I know that play really changed everything. Also, the play that definitely changed everything was that Marvin Harrison Jr. hit. I mean, he was smoking them the entire game. And if he's in it the rest of the way, I think that Ohio State probably wins that game because he probably makes enough plays for CJ Stroud that they can at least maybe waste the clock on one of those drives. And I think that would have been the different game. But, it's too hard to say because he obviously got hurt. Georgia's been very lucky in this instinct with getting wide receivers hurt in these games. I don't know what it is, just seems to happen. Right now, TCU is pretty healthy besides Jerry Miller. We'll talk about more on that in a second, but we'll see. Anything else from this game, Ian, that you want to talk about before we go on?
Yeah, just easily some of the best college football games I've ever seen. Once again, I can say it for both teams. It's a shame these teams had to lose,
Yeah.
but it definitely brings up an exciting matchup for the championship.
Yeah, he literally kicked the ball at midnight.
I
Like
know.
that was I've never seen anything like it. It was both games were ridiculous. They were amazing. They were a lot of fun to watch. I'm so glad that the season ended with those two games, and now potentially, hopefully, we get a really good game tomorrow as well. So, with that being said, let's talk about tomorrow. So, TCU, Georgia, the big matchup. Okay, so as of right now, the spread is 12.5. I don't think that is what it's going to end up. I just don't think that. It's too high. There's no way that TCU, the what is it, the fifth best scoring offense, is not going to be able to contend with scoring against Georgia when we've already seen the blueprint that Ohio State was able to score on Georgia. So I think that TCU is going to be able to score as well. The breakdown, the rest of it goes. The thing that out of all the stats, they're not exactly even as far as both of these teams because TCU's defense is not as strong. I don't think that's going to be the biggest difference because Georgia will probably score, and that's just what it is. I think really it's going to have to be Georgia has to stop TCU, and that'll be probably the difference. And maybe even TCU gets an interception here or there to really kind of like stop the possession back and forth scoring. But really, for TCU, though, the way they can take advantage is the fact that Georgia has the 65th best pass defense. That's kind of weak, and that really was showcased in the game against Ohio State. That Georgia doesn't have the strongest secondary, and they were picked apart quite well. And Max Duggan is very capable of moving down the field. Quentin Johnson is a stud receiver. They actually have a bevy of receivers, that guys that are capable of making plays. Like I said, Keandre Miller is right now a game time decision that they're going to wait until like literally as he's got pads on to see if he's going to play. I mean, I don't know. He's potentially can be drafted high, so it's like, do you want to ruin that? And I'm almost positive it was like a knee issue. I'm not exactly sure, but going into this game, I don't think TCU should be as big of an underdog as they are. I think Georgia is going to have a hard time really stopping this TCU offense. But Ian, let me hear your thoughts. I want to hear what you're thinking about this game.
Yeah, I think TCU, they really have to will their way to this one because if it's obviously, I know it sounds stupid, but it is true. I mean, it's going to come down to which team plays their kind of game. If this is a Georgia game where the defense just suffocates TCU, especially through the air, Georgia's going to like sleepwalk to this, and they very well easily could. We've seen them have no problem against elite offenses before against, like teams like TCU, Mississippi State, LSU, and obviously Ohio State is the exception. Can they do it again is really the question. And for TCU, they need to make this a shootout like they did against Michigan. And they need to do that early, and they need to find a way to get as many points on the board as much as possible, and they got to find a way to take advantage of as many opportunities because Georgia's defense, while they did give up over 50, almost 40 points, over 40 points last game, that is definitely the anomaly. It's not really, the consistent thing here. So for them, literally, they have to try to score every drive and take advantage of any opportunity they have. You did point out, yes, the secondary for Georgia is not as strong as it has been in years before. So they're gonna need to really rely on the matchups here. TCU's scheming is very much based on speed in the passing department. So they're going to have to find a way to attack them. Maybe a lot of curl routes, a lot of quick plays to get that separation needed between the secondary of like the cornerbacks and the safeties and the wide receivers. And that's the thing. They just need to get as much yards as much as possible. And maybe it would be a good thing to play keep away as well a bit, because Georgia's offense as well, while not as flashy, is still very dangerous. Either the running game or with Brock Bowers can for the passing department can really be deadly. So I think that's what it's going to come down to, is like, can TCU find a way to just stay ahead of Georgia enough, especially with how their defense runs? And can they take advantage of it? I think this game is really going to be decided on time of possession. Whoever has time of possession the most should win this game.
Yeah, the 3-3-5 that TCU plays could be a benefit in this game, because I know in that Georgia-Ohio State game, they were pushing with the pass a little too much in the beginning of that game, and I think they relied on it too much. They were trying to like set that up so they didn't have to go directly to the run game. I'm thinking that was their game plan, and that might backfire in this game if they try to do that again, because TCU is more adept with their 3-3-5 because they have more DBs out there that they should be able to play the pass a little bit better. Then again, Brock Bowers being there, he is a difference maker because he's so hard to guard. Because if you put a linebacker on there, he might be too slow. DB on him, he's just not as big. So I still like TCU to really probably make somewhat of a difference there, especially if Georgia tries to rely on the pass too much to begin with. That might be to TCU's advantage, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think because they run the 3-3-5, that Georgia's going to try to run the ball on them. And I think that's probably the best route, because if they run the ball early on that smaller front that TCU has, they're going to be able to start getting those huge chunk yards where they're running hard gains, and then they're getting first downs and moving down the field. And then if they're moving down the field, it's going to be hard for TCU to really stop them and to stop them from scoring. So I think that Georgia will probably at least 35 points, I'm guessing. But I will counter that I really think this TCU team is going to score a lot. I don't think that Georgia is going to be able to stop them. I know that, yes, Georgia's had a great defense all year, the last 2 years, but I don't think they're as good as a lot of people think they are. I think they've basically played a lot of terrible teams to make their rankings look a lot better than it is. They're the 11th overall defense, but like I said, 65th best pass defense is mediocre. That's kind of bad. And, I just think that they're going to be able to score on them. They're going to be able to put up points. Like I said, Keandre Miller, if he plays, that could be even the difference maker there. Because if he's healthy and he's able to run the ball well, DeMarcado is a strong running back as well. But Keandre Miller is, definitely NFL worthy as of right now. So let's just do it, Ian. What's your prediction? I want to hear your prediction. I want to let you go first.
Yeah, for this one, it really comes down to this. TCU had to go to a shootout to beat a very tough defensive team, and they won in that one. And that was because Michigan is not, like, those type of teams are not really prepared for that. Georgia plays, as I mentioned earlier, I think Georgia and Michigan were very similar, very, kind of run-oriented, defense-first, very heavy-hitting teams that just suffocate you to win the game. Not pretty, but certainly gets the job done. Georgia went to a shootout, a team that is mostly run-heavy, time of possession, play keep away, suffocate you. Yeah. And they won that one against an elite offense. And they have won these games against elite offenses that TCU is capable of. I do think it'll be a bit of a high-scoring game, But in the end, I just think Georgia will win out in this one. They've been here before. They know how to win these games and have been in these games before. TCU, there's going to need to have a lot of things go their way. There's too many things that need to happen for TCU for me to think that they can win this one without a doubt. So with that, as much as I hate to say it as a Gator fan, I think the Bulldogs repeat and win the national championship.
What's your score?
I would probably go with a 38-34 victory for the Bulldogs.
And you bring up a lot of good points, and I'm not going to really try to counter any of that. What I'm just going to say is what I have said almost all year is with this team, with TCU, yes, they lost to Kansas State, yes, and that put a huge damper on their season, but they came back, they beat this Michigan team. They have been, seems like, a team of destiny. There's just sometimes you see teams and there's just things go their way. You need a victory like the one against Baylor where they, fire drilled the field goal team out there and they kicked that field goal with like 2 seconds left. You need a victory like that sometimes to be able to propel yourself into the championship. I don't know, just sometimes there's teams that just, especially in college football, that find a way to win. Yes, they have the one loss, but I don't think that really is going to end up in the history of like looking back at this going to be that big of a deal, especially if they beat a team like Georgia and after they beat a team like Michigan. So I think they can do it. I think their offense is strong enough. Their defense will make opportunistic plays to be able to keep them in this game. I think TCU can win this one. I'm going to say TCU wins 44 to like 37. That's what I got. That's the show, everyone. This is probably our last show of the year. I mean, we may do a recap of the championship game, but I doubt it. Ian, I just want to thank you again for such a great year. You've been stellar all year. You've been stellar since we started. You've been such an awesome asset to this brand. But just say some few words before we go, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful to be here. Again, I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million more. Chris, thank you so much for having me on here and just giving me some place to talk about college football to as many people as we do. I am very grateful for it, and I'm very appreciative of it. Every time I come on here and every week we talk about college football, and I'm always excited after the week of games, no matter how they go, to at least, talk, discuss with you and with all the people who listen in.
Awesome, man. And I couldn't ask for a better co-host, man. You've done a great job, especially with your articles. It's just every article gets better and better. You're just, it's great to see your progression and just, this is what we love. We love college football, and we hope that you people that listen to this and to watch this, get to see our appreciation for the sport, our passion for the sport. But that's it. This is the last show of the year, potentially. Reach us at haterradio.com, at hater_radio, Hater Radio for YouTube, Twitter. Just tweet at me. I'll get back at you. But that's it. Everyone have a good one. Enjoy this game tomorrow. I'm excited. I might get a ticket and I might go potentially. I'm going to go down there, try to see where Paul Feinbaum's broadcasting from for sure. But all right. Take care, everyone.